Welcome to Fulgrim's Weekly Crusade, in which I tell you what I've been up to in Eternal Crusade, and on the forums, all with their bias towards the heavy bolter. I've been a bit late posting this, which has given me the opportunity to make some comments on what's been going on in the forums that has kind of blown up this week. I'll get onto that shortly, but other than that, the major points of discussion on the forums this week have been melee, plasma guns, and Eldar Reapers and PvE, sorry. With the reduced survivability this patch, a lot of people are feeling the pain in melee, particularly getting one shot when caught unawares by the higher tier weapons. I haven't had anything to say myself on the matter, given my weapon choice and latency. Melee just isn't for me. But my experience of melee hasn't changed a lot. Although it sounds like those who do prefer melee are still not happy that the rock paper scissors model is not working as intended. Plasma guns have been coming under a lot of fire for being so much better than bolters. While on paper the bolter has some advantages such as more total damage before reloading or overheating, these don't often come into play with the reduced survivability we have right now. Combined with no damage drop-off and being less affected by suppression, the plasma gun comes out on top in the current situation where you can fit all of your war gear in with room to spare. The consensus on the forum seems to be that the introduction of weapon mods will change the situation for bolters and that an increase in the cost of the plasma gun is in order. The threads about Eldar Dark Reapers were mostly talking about how effective they are in close quarters, when the expectation is that they're long-range weapons. I didn't get involved in this discussion either, but it seems to be something that behaviour struggles with, that is, the balance between making a weapon strong at long range without also making it overpowered at close range. With the heavy bolter and the plasma cannon, this is balanced with firing delays or charge-up times, but the asymmetrical balance of the Eldar seems to be to not have these kind of things, which makes balancing them challenging. Given that the Eldar are still pretty new on the battlefield, I expect there to be more work on this done in future balance passes. I have been pretty active on the forums and taking part in the PvE discussions, especially the tactics and tips thread. The reception of the Hive missions has been largely positive, and there have been plenty of knowledge and experience sharing going on. It's been quite novel to me to be part of a community and figuring out how things are done. The thing that has blown up on the forums is an interview by Zoran-Brent Interview, the lead developer at Behaviour. I haven't listened to the whole hour-plus long interview, but one piece of information has caused the uproar. That is, the fate of the open world vision at release. From the initial full MMO open world that we were promised at the very beginning, the vision and practicality has shifted to accommodate the resources and technology that are available to Behaviour, and the community has largely moved along with that. But it seems that many players are no longer willing to budge. Brent has said that on release, the player's actions in the field will not directly affect the world map, but instead become some sort of aggregated contribution to territorial progress. A more intense and deeper player interaction is slated to come after release. It took about a day worth sitting there with some amount of discussion, but then the forums just exploded with threads and comments in both the general and the founders lounge. There's a lot of people are very unhappy that they're not getting what was promised until sometime after launch. This is the kind of thing that kills a game if it's not handled well. There is a number of lobby shooters on the market, and apart from the 40k IP, one major point of difference Eternal Crusade has was in the way that which players could affect ownership of territories, and that ownership having some kind of in-game effect. Taking this away and promising its return at some point in the future requires a great level of trust on the player's part, and from the comments on the forums it seems there isn't a lot of that. Personally, I'm not overly troubled by this revelation. I'm pretty easy to please, and I'm familiar with designing products and how much the scope and requirements can change, especially close to launch. However, I can certainly understand those who are more upset, and I don't think they're being wholly unreasonable. I hope, for behaviour's sake, that they have some further kind of response to the players' concerns than has been covered so far, and I hope they do that soon. Right, back to the gameplay. I spent most of my time, well, last week, in Hive missions. I've managed to complete them several times, at least once as heavy, as tactical and as ground assault. As a first showing, I'm quite impressed. It's very rough around the edges, but shows great promise. The format will be familiar to those that have played games like Left 4 Dead or Vermintide, with elements of the Space Marine Exterminatus gameplay thrown in. Teamwork is absolutely crucial to success, and some parts of it are brutally unforgiving. The pacing is excellent, with periods of lower intensity interspersed with more frantic moments, but this isn't achieved solely by alternating wave and rest periods. There is a lot of work to be done, however. It's rather disappointing to have the optimal strategy in several places to be to simply run to the end, avoid all the enemies, and end the level. It's full of more bugs than just the Tyranids, and there's a lot of tuning that needs to be done still, particularly for how melee works. Matchmaking can be problematic when the map is clearly designed for a full or near full group, and you're getting groups of 3, 2, and even 1 the other night, which didn't last very long. In spite of all that, it was still fun enough that I spent most of my game time in there, even though it was the same map over and over again. Each run was different, with different challenges and different pacing depending on the individual loadouts and tactics that each player adopted. If this was all that Eternal Crusade was, I would be enjoying it for quite a while. On the PvP front, I played around with a plasma cannon for a match or two. I managed to rack up more kills than I usually do on the heavy bolter, and I can see how a skilled user can make serious trouble for the enemy. I got so many kills that I'm certain the target just never saw coming, the unavoidable deaths that I've mentioned previously, and the range at which I could get kills was just amazing to me. That said, it's not really a playstyle that I would enjoy long term, so I'm going to stick with my heavy bolter. Speaking of which, I did have one amazing match that highlights the feast or famine nature of the heavy bolter. I racked up 22 kills defending Point Alpha on Magon, which is something like twice what I usually manage. Throw in suppression assists and a ticking 15 defense bonus, and I cleared 7,000 points. Unfortunately, I didn't have my video capture software running at the time, so you'll have to make do with more plasma gun footage here. The low survivability at the moment compensates for the accuracy bug quite nicely, so I hope that the bug fix comes at the same time that the survivability goes up. Otherwise, the heavy bolter may suffer from undeserved accusations of being overpowered. It won't actually be overpowered, but simply brought into line with other heavy weapons like the plasma cannon and the autocannon, but moving it into that class of weapon is going to come as a shock, especially if that comes with the current level of survivability. So that's been my week. The lack of promise regarding the strategic map, but the hint of a promise of more enjoyable PvP and some very promising PvE. I hope you will all enjoy your next week in Eternal Crusade. If you liked this video, let me know down below with a like button and leave your thoughts in the comments. See you next week.